Welcome back to class. Welcome back to YouTube class. Today we're going to be learning about two things, proportions and percents, the two P's. We're going to be learning about the two P's in the next few days. And there's no better way to learn about the two P's on this cold day than with a nice warm fire. Now, the two P's, proportions and percents, are actually the same thing. I'm going to teach you both of them, but by the end of the lesson, I hope that you see how proportions and percents are similar and how you use them differently. So you've already learned about proportions, I said. Proportions are another part of what I would call the fractions unit, the whole concept of fractions. And so far with fractions, we've learned about adding fractions and we've learned about multiplying fractions. Or we've learned about adding and subtracting and then multiplying and dividing. And so adding and subtracting, you have a fraction, let's say 1/2, plus another fraction, 3/2. And if they have the same bottom, you add them together. You know that one. With multiplying and dividing, you have a fraction like 1/2. Multiply that by another fraction like 4/3. Multiply tops, multiply bottoms, and you get your answer. Now, with proportions are two fractions, not with a plus sign, not with a minus sign, not with multiplying or dividing, but with a different sign in between them. They're two fractions that are set equal to each other. One half is equal to 3/6. That is true, so therefore they are a proportion. Now, what you're going to be working through in the homework and with all the different lessons that you'll be dealing with in this entire chapter is there's going to be a piece of this proportion missing. Suppose that it was the 6. And instead of a 6, we had an x. Why do we put an x there? Because it's algebra and we deal with letters now. I'm sorry, it's painful, but how, with a proportion, suppose we didn't know it was a 6, with a proportion, how do we solve for x? You've learned about one way of solving it in past classes. That way looks like this. You draw the circle around these numbers. And I forget this method because I use a completely different method, but maybe this will ring some bells for some of you. Now, the method I'm going to be teaching you to solve for x is this. It's called cross multiplication. When there's an equal sign in between two fractions, you can turn it into an easier problem by doing this. Multiply those two. 1 times x. And then multiply these two, which gives you 2 times 3. Now put those equal to each other. These two statements equal each other. So if you have 2 times 3 over here, and if you have 1 times x over here, and you simplify that, if you calculate what you know how to calculate, you end up with x equals 6. There you have it. There's our x. So cross multiplication is the way to solve proportions. Now let's try an example. I want you to solve this on your own using cross multiplication first, and then you simplify and get x alone to find what x equals. Go. All right, let's see if what you got is correct. Cross multiply, 3 times 20. is going to be 60. And that equals x times 10, which is 10x. To get x alone, we have to divide away the 10. So divide by 10, divide by 10, which gives us x on one side equals 60 divided by 10 is 6. So the x in this situation is 6, and what we notice about both of these fractions is 3 is half of 6 and 10 is half of 20. Maybe you could have seen that from the beginning and known that 6 was going to go into the x. But this is the way to solve any proportion problem where you have a variable in it. You'll find proportions in several real-life situations, like when you look at maps. Not Google Maps, but old maps, like the maps that your parents use that you will probably never use again because you have Google. What maps had in the old days is if you had a map like this, and this is a map of a park, a hypothetical park, there would be something at the bottom called a legend, in which it would tell you the size of this map compared to real life. And so it would say something like this. This would be a legend that would say something, and you can't see it, but I have 1 inch on top, and I have 1 mile on bottom. And what that legend is saying is that the measurement of an inch would be about the measurement of a mile for this map. Now, that's completely inaccurate for this map, but on a good legend, they would have measured everything and then have calculated exactly the proportion that you would need to figure out how big the map was in real life. And so, with maps, we use proportions to figure out how big the real-life park is. For example, if I know that this football field is 100 yards, and on this map, suppose it measured 3 inches, then my proportion would be 3 over 100, where 3 inches equals 100 yards. And then suppose I wanted to measure this lake. I didn't know the actual size of the lake, but I did know that on the map it measures, let's say, 5 inches across. So if I know it measures 5 inches across, then I can figure out how long it is across in real life. And typically you want to have units on these, so we'd have yards, inches, yards. And if you were to solve this, x would cross multiply with 3, and that would equal 100 cross multiplying with 5, so 500. Get the x alone by dividing each side by 3. And you get 500 divided by 3. Which I can't do in my head right now, but that is the fraction. It would give you a number, and that is how long the lake is in real life. All right, back to proportions and percents. This is the last part of the lesson. Percents are proportions, and this is how. When you say that you have, let's talk about it in terms of money. So a tip is about 20% of a bill. So if you have 20% of a bill, what 20% means is 20 over 100. 20% means 20 over 100. That is your fraction. in a proportion, if your bill is, say, $10, then you can figure out how much you need for your tip by doing the cross multiplication with these proportions. So all percents are proportions, and you set up the percent in a fraction over 100. So whatever percent it is, 50%, 90%, you take that number and you put it over 100. Today you're going to work on lesson activity 4.1, designing a park. Work through this assignment with a partner. Do it well. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, that is all for my lesson for today and tomorrow. So have fun.